Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Brave Enough to Talk podcast. I'm your host, Cousin Marcus, and I talk about all things mental health. And for those of you out there who are tuning in for the first time, I do want to preference this. This podcast is geared towards men because I don't feel like there's enough out there for men's mental health, but that does not mean that this is exclusive to men. So if anybody out there who's watching this or listening to it, I hope that you can find some use from what I talk about to help you in your situations as well. Like I said, this is for men, but it's not exclusive to men. With that being said, I kind of want to talk about something. I want to tackle an issue that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think it's been talked about at all. Honestly, I don't think I've really found anything. I'm sure there's somebody somewhere, but not to my knowledge. And that's body dysmorphia within men. Usually when you think of body dysmorphia, when you hear someone say that, or, it's body image issues, it's usually, you think about women, you think about social media influencers and, how they do all of these different things to make themselves constantly look beautiful and what it is to society standards and things like that. But nobody really talks about that when it comes to men, because it affects men too, whether you realize it or not. And honestly, it affects men deeply, but silently at the same time. And that's what makes it so hard to really notice it. Whether it's the pressure to look bigger, stronger, leaner, or just quote unquote better, it can eat away at your self-esteem and your mental health, quite frankly, which is the biggest issue here. And let's talk about what body dysmorphia is. Body dysmorphic disorder is when you can't stop thinking about perceived flaws in your appearance, even when those flaws are minor or invisible to others. Like for men, for instance, that often look, like they're never feeling muscular enough or never feeling lean enough, or obsessing over a big one, height. Height is a huge one that people obsess with over all the time. Hair loss or scars. Think about it, for instance, and it has a lot to do with, social media, the culture within the internet and society, and what it places upon men and how they should view themselves in their self-worth. You see, and I know social media isn't a great reflection of what real life really is, but tell that to someone who's young and impressionable at the same time. You look at social media and you see some of those interviews where people are interviewing people about relationships and things like that, or what do women see in a man, or what do men feel is important for women when choosing a man. And the first thing that people say almost 9 times out of 10 is height. Oh, if this person isn't over 6 feet, they're not worth my time, and things like that. Is that how everyone perceives a man to be? No. But if you look at social media, you would believe that's the case. You would believe that if you're not over 6 feet tall, you're not worth it. And for someone who isn't 6 feet tall, I'm sure that probably weighs on their mental health tremendously. You know what I mean? And I've seen it. I've seen it happen firsthand, where I'm talking to friends of mine and they're like, man, you're lucky you're so tall. And I'm like, but my man, you're a great dude. My height does not make me a great person. Your height doesn't make you not a great person. You know what I mean? And like I said, it's the same thing with the weight. Just because someone isn't, as chiseled as maybe Michael B. Jordan or someone like that, or Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, things like that, does not mean that you're not a good person. It doesn't mean that you have less self-worth than the next guy who is super muscular. Think about how many times we see on some of those reality TV shows where the guys are super swole and jacked up and they're complete meatheads. They're like terrible people inside, you know what I mean? So your appearance does not determine who you are as a person. It does not determine your personality. And another one that, like I said, we deal with as well is hair loss. I would to be honest with you, I think that might be, and I know this might not be the case, but that is a huge financial player within Turkey. Turkey makes a lot of money off of people going abroad for hair restoration, which is a big thing. People spend a lot of money. Think about throughout history, wigs, toupees. You look at old pictures of like George Washington crossing the rivers and stuff like that. He had that big wig on. People had wigs. People were always self-conscious about hair loss, and you see it all the time. I know friends of mine who are bald wear hats all of the time, and they're not bad-looking people. Being bald doesn't mean you're a terrible-looking person. It happens. It's natural, and I understand. You want to hold on to that stuff because it's just like I said. It goes back to that. How it affects you mentally and how you feel like people perceive you. If you don't have hair, you must not be anybody important. You must not be worth it. You're not conventionally attractive because you don't have hair. And those things really, 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 affect how people view themselves and their self-worth, which is a huge contributor of the body dysmorphia. And especially like in gym culture, things can spiral into something called muscle dysmorphia or bigorexia, where no matter how much progress you make, it's never enough. And I'm someone who's been going to the gym since I was, 16, 17. I've been working out for years. I'm 35 years old. I've never been to a point where I was overweight statistically, or quote unquote not in shape looking. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, there's a lot of times my cardio is pretty terrible and I can't breathe and I can't run a mile, I promise you that. But on the outside, and you see me, people are like, oh man, you're so fit, you're so in shape. But there's been times in my life where even though other people were saying that, I still looked at it as if to say, well, you sure? I feel like I'm getting, out of shape here, or my arms aren't big enough, my legs aren't big enough, my shoulders aren't big enough. Oh man, my abs don't look as defined as they did before. That affects everybody. Just think about when you see in the gym, it's an issue with like steroids and things like that. Social media plays a big role in this gym culture trap. And it's not to say that we shouldn't be promoting fitness and health. We absolutely should. That's very important. But to an extent, it shouldn't be toxic. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be promoting gym culture to where it affects you mentally, or it becomes unhealthy. We see shredded actors and characters preparing for superhero movies. Think about every superhero movie you've seen. Normally you see some of these actors, they look like the regular Joes in the street, but when it comes to the movie roles, man, they spend months preparing and getting in shape, and you see him in the movie, like, man, the guy has like a 15-pack. I've never seen a 15-pack in my life, but all of a sudden this guy has one for the movie, and that's not realistic. And then people start comparing themselves to that, or you see on social media and women are saying, oh my God, this guy is super attractive in this movie, this XYZ actor. And then so now you're like, man, that's what they like. I need to be like that. When you might be in shape. You might be a very fit guy, but you're not fit enough because you're not as fit as XYZ actor. And you feel like you need to do more. And sometimes that kind of pushes people to unhealthy habits because it's pretty much in an unrealistic bar that's being set by the entertainment industry, by social media. And then a lot of these influences and stuff that you'll see online that are gym influencers, and it's not everybody, but a lot of them you see that online, gym influencers, and they have these unrealistic body types. They're secretly taking steroids. Sometimes you see a body, and don't get me wrong, genetics plays a big part in what you can look like, in your fitness journey. But at the same time, some of these bodies are completely unrealistic, and it has a lot to do with steroids, and think about it at the same time as well. We talk about how women deal with body dysmorphia and what they see on social media when it comes to some of these influencers and all of the butt selfies, when realistically these people have going and get plastic surgery with lip fillers and BBLs. And I know it's not everybody. Some people just naturally have it, or they worked hard in the gym to get it. But people don't know that. People can't tell it. From what you see on social media, everybody has it and you don't. You know what I mean? And that pushes people towards unhealthy habits in order to pursue this look that's just unrealistic, and you're chasing it. And it seems like the finish line just keeps moving and you'll never get there, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you run, no matter how much you lift, no matter how hard you try, you just won't catch it. Because a lot of times what you're seeing on social media just isn't real. Like I say, you see people starting to overtrain, do these extreme diets, and it'll be a person on social media telling you, oh, you see the comments, how did you get that way? Give us the plan, give us the workout plan. And then he gives you some unrealistic workout plan that never happened, because that's not what he did. He used steroids. Oh, do this, do that, buy this, buy that, and it'll be something super unhealthy, some extreme diet, or, there might be some out there that might just straight up tell you, just get on the steroids, it's faster, But the problem, it's never enough. It's never enough, and it's super unhealthy. You might gain the size or the strength, but mentally you're still chasing a perfect version of yourself that does not exist. And that's the problem. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's all in the gym, because some of these problems go beyond the gym. It's not just about muscle. For some guys, like I said, it's the hairline. For others, it's being too skinny or too fat or not tall enough, like I said, with the height. I've seen some videos recently, and I know this has become a thing. I know, like I said, people are going to other countries for hair restoration, and I'm not knocking anyone who would love to see their hair come back and stuff like that, but it all contributes to the issue of loving yourself, the problem that we have with loving ourselves and, really holding on to our self-worth. I've seen recently there are guys out there going and getting, I don't even know how to call it, but they're getting extensions in their legs to extend their height. There's a video of a guy, I think that I've seen about 2 or 3 of them. They did it, I want to say during like COVID or maybe the year or 2 after. And they went out of the country out of the US, to get surgery and get their legs extended, their height extended, going from like 5'9", 5'8", 5'9" to 6 feet. That is extremely dangerous. That is extremely dangerous. I don't think it's ever that serious to put yourself at risk of health issues just because you want to seem taller, just because you want to get bigger faster, just because you want to lose weight. It's never a good idea to do the extremes where you could potentially harm yourself in the long run or even lose your life. It's never, it's never worth it. And because men are taught not to talk about these insecurities, these feelings get buried, and then you see people do things like that, those extremes that could potentially be, harmful for them in the long run. It can lead to isolation, depression, anxiety, and even, avoiding social events because you feel like you don't measure up to the next guy. Comparing yourself to the next guy is the biggest culprit of what we have going on as a society, and I think social media makes it too easy to see this pretend lifestyle that other people are living and comparing yourself to it and be like, man, why can't I look like that guy? Why can't I be like that? And at the end of the day, it's causing so many people to have these feelings that, they can't control, or they decide to act on in the worst ways. And honestly, the mental toll that comes with it is ridiculous. The worst part is that these thoughts don't stay in the mirror. Like I said, they follow you everywhere. They can make you feel like you're not worthy of love, not worthy of respect, or not good enough as a man. And when you get your self-worth tied up in your appearance, it's a dangerous place to be. Injuries, age, or life changes can completely shake your identity. You're like, think about, for instance, someone who might have been a world-class athlete and they get an injury. Perfect example, Derrick Rose. And those of you who don't know Derrick Rose was a phenomenal top-tier NBA player who came into the league, won the youngest MVP in NBA history, the whole 9 yards, and was on pace to probably be one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. But it's a what-if situation. He ended up injuring himself, and he's talked about it himself, but everything started to spiral when you're on top of the world, and you look a certain way, you're able to do certain things, and all of a sudden it's just taken away from you. That eats at you mentally. I can't imagine being the guy who's on top of the world and all of a sudden you feel like you're a nobody. And it's not to say that he's a nobody, because he still went on to have a decent career. He just recently retired. He was able to play, well over a decade and stuff. But it's always that what if, what could he have been? Or some people, I know some guys that played football and they were on track to be, to go, like, let's say they go to college and they get a major injury. They injure their spine, they can't walk, they're in a wheelchair, things like that. To be able to mentally come from something like that I know it's a struggle. It's a struggle every day. And even when people are like, oh, I've come to terms with it, but you're still dealing with it every day. I used to be able to walk. I used to be like this. I used to be like that. Or I tore a ligament, and then you start to gain weight, and you start to compare yourself to other people, especially. Or you might compare yourself to yourself. Looking at older videos, older pictures of yourself, comparing yourself to what you used to be, to what you are now, and building up that depression of like, man, what happened to me? I'm a nobody now. I used to be a somebody. But because you don't look the same does not mean that you don't have any value. Doesn't mean you're just all of a sudden not a good person, that you're not worthy, of love, relationships, and respect. And I think that's the problem that a lot of people deal with, is tying their physical appearance into their self-worth too tight. I know you should care about your health and wellness, and I will never stop preaching that. But at the same time, some things are out of your control. And just because you don't have all of the muscles and all of the six packs and things like that, or you can't run faster than Usain Bolt, or you can't jump higher than Odell Beckham or whoever, does not mean that you're less of a person. Get that out of your head. Like, come on, man, we all struggle with it. I do, you do. And the thing is, you compare yourself to these people, you look at yourself, and you wonder why you can't look like the next guy. I promise you, the next guy you're looking at is thinking the same thing about you or somebody else, but just in another form. Everybody deals with that level of, confidence where they start to lose it and feel those insecurities. Everybody does. You're not alone. You're not the only one. Nobody's immune to feeling insecurity. I don't care what they tell you. Everybody shows you what they want to on social media. Don't compare your life to that. Don't compare your life to what you see on a platform like, let's say, Instagram or TikTok, which can be altered by Photoshop, or people only showing you the best versions of themselves. Sometimes it's even edited, And just remember, just a lot of these influencers that you see that are these fitness influencers or these actors, these athletes, not everyone is naturally like that. Some people paid for that. You know what I mean? Or some people did some really dangerous, unhealthy stuff to get that way, i.e. steroids. And that's not what you want. That is not what you want. I promise you, that is not what you want. And so let's look at it like this. How do you break the cycle when it comes to feeling that way, that perpetual feeling of a loss of self-worth and insecurities? You can shift your goals from aesthetics to performance. Focus on what your body can do, not just how it looks. Cut down on the mirror checkups and stop obsessing over yourself in the mirror. Stop obsessively comparing yourself to other people, especially those online. Like I said, they can alter that. They don't always look how they look on Instagram. I can promise you that. Stop comparing yourself to what people look like on the internet. That'll be your biggest downfall. Limit your exposure to unrealistic fitness content. Like, there's nowhere in the world, everybody's not gonna look like the world's strongest guy. Not everybody's gonna look like every single influencer you see on the internet, unless you're willing to harm yourself with steroids and unhealthy, medicines and things like that. And most importantly, talk to somebody, whether it's a friend, a therapist, or even online support. The moment you say it out loud, the moment you take away some of its power, you know what I mean? The more you talk about it, the less it hurts you. So honestly, if this episode hits home for you, just know that you're not alone. I promise you, know your self-worth. Your worth is not just your muscles or your abs or your height. It's how you treat people. It's how you make people feel, how you show up, and how kind of a person you are to others. If you dealt with body dysmorphia, please comment, let me know. I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments, or just message me privately if you don't want people to know. Your story might be what helps the next person feel better, what helps the next person get over that hump and stop comparing themselves to what they see on the internet. And it might help someone feel less alone. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.